السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين صلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا ثم أما بعد. How many of you know people who got married, just recently got married, and they're already having trouble in their relationship? Raise your hands. Come on, don't be shy. Okay, how many of you know that some of these kids, they got married and the reason they're having trouble in their relationship because they married against the will of their parents? Raise your hands. The guys are trying to keep quiet. How many of you would know that one of the biggest problems these kids perhaps they have in their relationship because of the different values they share with each other? Maybe because there were values imposed on them in the relationship. Raise your hands if you know it's a matter of values between the couple. So for everything that I'm mentioning over here, there's an issue going on. And Dr. Altaf Hussain, mashallah, he entertained us very well in the introduction of the meaning of that, how that generation gap is genuine and really it's from the beginning of the relationship, the upbringing. And I would like to share with you right now some of the outcome and the result of not paying attention to that generation gap at that very young age. It ends up when our young ones, they become actually young adults. When the young adults right now are in that age where now we're preparing them to take over from us, they're going to become the future of our community. They become the parents of the future. They will have their own children. And we will enjoy watching them as they take over from us slowly and gradually. But suddenly we realize there is a huge cultural gap. There's no communication, or at least the communication is not as strong or as healthy as we think it is. One of the reasons for that, Ali bin Abi Talib radiallahu ta'ala explains that, or he explained that 1400 years ago. He said in his beautiful statement, قال أدبوا أولادكم لزمانهم لا لزمانكم فإنهم خلقوا لزمان غير زمانكم. You raise your children for their time, not your time, because they were created in a time different than yours. It's very simple, very, very simple, but very profound. Most of our parents, when they want to raise their children, they want to bring copies of their lives. Why? Because they think they know better. And the true, they know better because there are treasures of experience. These parents, they have treasures of experience. And every parent would love to see his or her child to be more successful than they are. Because the success of their children is nothing but continuation of their success. And what do you think crowning or basically icing the cake for parents when it comes after their children, they finish school, they go to college and they graduate? What is the icing on that cake for them? Their marriage. They want to be happy to see their kids getting married, and they marry to the person they think, or at least the parents, they think will be the best for them, inshallah ta'ala. And once they secure their children in marriage, parents retire. Alhamdulillah, done my job. Khalas, you're on own right now. Not realizing in the process, we somehow see things changing differently and dramatically in the Muslim community. Ali bin Abi Talib, he said it clearly. When you raise your children, keep in your mind their time, not your time. Ask yourself as a parent, how many of you, they lived during the time when there were things like cell phones? Anyone lived in the time of cell phones 20, 50 years ago? How about iPads? Anyone know anything about Facebook until maybe 5 minutes ago? So you see, there's so many things happen in the younger generation. Parents, they cannot catch up with sometimes. And unfortunately, it's creating the gap because parents, just like Dr. Altaf mentioned, there is no much communication between the parents and the children. They're too busy sometimes to communicate with their kids. So the kids, they start a divergence in those two paths. The kids were going one way, and the parents would go another way. And I would like to share with you, inshallah ta'ala here, 7 points I have seen as gaps into the culture of marriage in the Muslim community today. 7 gaps that needs to be bridged in regard to the understanding of marriage between the youth and the elders and their parents. And I'm going to be very honest and very blunt with you at some points, because these are very serious matters and these are actually real issues. Number one is the concept of marriage itself. You know, our kids, they grow up in this culture watching TV and reading stories and novels and romance, and more than seeing marriage in real life from their parents, from their elders. Most of the elders, they model their marriage from their parents and from their aunts and uncles when they were growing up. The young ones, they sit down among the adults. The adults will be talking and chit-chatting and sometimes raising their voices as they converse with each other. The kids are just watching. They're learning. They can model off these examples. If you ask yourself, your kids, how often do they socialize with adults, with elders in the community? Most of their time is their own circles, young circles. So when it comes to the concept of marriage, they're taking it from a completely different source. This is the media. So they watch TV. All what they know about marriage is supposed to be based on what? Based on what, ya Jama'ah? Are you scared to say the word? Love. It has to be based on love, right? Okay, what is the number one option to prove that it's based on love? It has to be beauty, the value of love for them. So when they want to get married, I always face these kids and they come to me, they said, I want you to help me, find someone. I said, okay, what are you looking for? So Allah, I want this. They give me slogans, of course. We're going to talk about that later. So they gave me slogans and I said, tell me more. What do you say? I want someone who's beautiful, who's this. I said, tell me what is your standard of beauty? The standard of beauty for them is unrealistic. It says, you know what, wallahi, that's a very good choice. If you find I want to marry her, inshallah ta'ala. They give me descriptions from Jannah. They give you just, said, wallahi, that's amazing if you can find one like this, ya. Oh, she's perfect, mashallah. I gave advice, I said, by the way, never ask someone to look for something like this for you, because they're going to take it for themselves. But my point, the concept is completely different. So when it comes to the subject of love, indeed, relationship should be based on that. However, how do you define it? I have a whole seminar based on that I'm teaching, called Fiqh of Love and Love Notes. Whole seminar on the subject. The concept of love and how it is supposed to be translated into real life. When it comes to love, we have two values here. The parents, they tell their kids, listen, this is nonsense. You get married, you will fall in love afterwards, inshallah ta'ala. And for the kid to say, how do you want me to marry someone I don't love? True statements, both. But how do you translate that in real life? That is the problem. The young ones, they have this Cinderella model of love. It's all about beauty. She's beautiful. And subhanAllah, he fell in love for a shoe. That's the problem in this story. And he went around the entire city looking for that foot that would fit in that glass shoe. And whoever that person is, regardless how beautiful, how ugly it might be, that's it. She's the one. These are the things, the images of love that comes to, the hearts and minds of our younger ones. But for the parents as well, they say, listen, I live with your mom for the past 50 years. Alhamdulillah, we have no issues in regard to the subject of love. You ask the mother, she says, well, I have to put up with many things. But at least they survived. And they literally lived happily ever after. So there are huge, actually, issues when it comes to the concept of love. How do you define that? How do you bridge the gap between your children and the parents? Many cases I have seen today because of the kids, they go to school on their own. They are in college right now. Specifically those who come from high school, freshmen, they go to college. They think college is all about falling in love. That's it. So the first year, most of freshmen will be just, looking around and just, having fun and wasting time, basically. Why? Because they just trained that this is how the culture is here. And once they fall in love with someone, they come to you and says, I want to get married. How old are you, Habibi? 17. And how old is she, mashallah? She's 15. And it's so cute, but it cannot be real. It's so difficult. Wallah, I'm telling you, by the way, it's a real scenario. It happened when someone came to me. It's real scenario, not once, not twice, wallahi. Many, many examples. The young man is in college, barely freshman or finishing high school, and he wants to marry someone who's still barely in her first year in high school. I said, this is indeed, I tell him, this is wallahi, this is so cute, but I don't think it's real. You have to wake up, and you have to make sure that the concept of marriage is clear to you. Now, if I ask you the question, how many of you parents discuss the concept of marriage with their children when they're about 15, 16 years old? Anyone? Wow. Young ones, how many of you heard serious talks about marriage from your parents when you were about 15, 16 years old? See, just few. And that's why when it comes to getting married, they have no experience. They have no theoretical even concept of it. It's all what they watch on TV, what they read in these magazines. Number two, the second thing, the choice. Okay, now we understand the concept of love. Fine. I understand the concept of marriage. Fine. But whom should I choose for marriage? This is one of the biggest challenges we have in the Muslim community. For our children, they want to be completely independent in their choices. They have the full right, and Islam sanctions that for them. Even the girls, when someone proposes and she's not happy with him, she has the full right to say, no, I don't want this guy. And no one has the right to force her to marry someone against her will. No one has the right to do that, including parents. So when it comes to the choice, our kids, they live different, again, time and different culture from their parents. Most of our kids, they live on campuses more than they do at home. So when they intermingle with this community, also when they come to the masjid, they also intermingle with a lot of people from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different colors, and so on. So the children, they grow up in terms of culture, they grow up completely color blind in terms of cultural boundaries. They don't see that. So when they want to get married and someone from a different culture proposes, or they propose someone to their parent, they say, what? Are you serious? But he's not Arab. So what's the problem? Yeah, so it becomes a completely cultural shock for the parents. And sometimes even the boy or the girl. The parents, they introduce someone to their children, says, but Dad, I mean, she wasn't born here. She didn't grow up in this culture, in this society. How am I going to communicate with her? Don't worry, she can cook very well, inshallah ta'ala. So the only thing we know from the culture is the spices and the sharwal qamis, that's it. But reality has changed. These kids, they don't see these boundaries. So they now easily start introducing their parents to people of other cultures. The older generation is still holding actually tight to their old traditions. It has to be someone from our, not even just culture, it's actually from our family. To that extent. And then guess what? Which is not fair. They let their children choose. So listen, you choose anyone, as long as he from an Arab culture, from Palestine, from Ramallah, from that town, they live in that street when they were back in the 1950s, and their family is so and so, and then you have the choice, inshallah ta'ala. And that's when they say, but Dad, I think that's my cousin. I say, MashaAllah alayk. Khalas. You got the choice. Choices have changed for the children. Our kids, they have varieties now. Because again, they grew up in a American Muslim culture. They don't see these colors, they don't see these boundaries. That's why when their parents want them to adhere to an old tradition, they're trying to force their zaman, their time on the zaman at the time of their children. So it becomes an issue of conflict. Some of the kids, under pressure, they give in, so they accept. And sometimes the parents, they give in and they accept, but not willingly. And that's why they always have trouble in that relationship. Had they done that out of good faith and love and understanding of the opposite culture of their children, their parents, they will have no trouble. They would, mashallah, will succeed in this relationship. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Number three. Another thing we have here is the issue of vocabulary. The issue of vocabulary. One of the main and most common requests of the younger ones and their parents when they want to look for someone, the kids in particular, they ask me to help them find someone for them. I said, what exactly are you looking for? You know what is the first word they say? What is the number one choice they have? One word, they say, what is it? I need someone who is? Can you guess? Religious. The younger generation, they say, I want someone who is religious. And guess what? Sometimes these words come from the least religious person. Why is that? Because for them, when we were still having fun in college, it was for the fun of it. But now when I want to get married, hey, listen, that's serious now. I need someone who's religious, so I don't keep looking behind my back. I want someone that I can trust. That's what they say. But now when we come to saying religious, we're talking about vocabulary over here right now. You ask the children and the parent to bring someone religious for them. So the mother, she says, MashaAllah alayha, she's religious. But mom, she doesn't pray. Yeah, but mashallah, she's from a good family. But yeah, but they don't even pray. They sell alcohol. Well, but they're a very good family. Their grandfather used to be imam of the masjid in our village back in 1940s and all the stuff and so on. So the concept of religiosity is completely different, distorted. Same thing. Sometimes as the father wants to, let's say, wants to put the concept of religion first for their children. But we start arguing over what is religious and what is liberal. Our kids, they grow up in the masajid more, they spend more time in the masajid than some of our kids, basically, more than their parents. And their parents, they grow up in a culture, being in the masjid is just, luxury. But for our kids here, it's essential because it's instincts of survival. They want to know who they are, what's their identity as a Muslim living in America. Most of the parents, they grew up in Muslim countries, so coming to the masjid was given. So there is no question about it. And that's why when they say, I want someone who is religious, they want someone who supports their views in terms of salah, ibadah, being faithful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to their deen and so on. And our parents, they have the traditional format of being religious. So we have a cultural gap here that needs to be bridged. Parents, they need to understand how kids think when it comes to the concept of religion. What do they want exactly? They need someone to help them in their ibadah and their deen. And by the way, for the parents, if you know now that most of these young men, even the least religious, when they want to get married, they start looking for someone who's seriously religious, you better raise your children to be religious. Otherwise, they're going to lose in the market of marriage. Thinking that exposing your kids to be completely, ultimately free from any kind of ethical, responsibility or religious responsibility, that once they get married, inshallah, they'll take care of themselves afterwards. It doesn't happen that way. You have to show them the way, how to become religious. Number 4, weddings. Allahu Akbar. You guys, you know what I'm talking about, right? When it comes to weddings, the kids, they just want to get married. Let's do it in one of these restaurants here in Patterson, inshallah ta'ala, and we live happily ever after. What's the problem with that, guys? But here, sometimes when we do these weddings, it's not realistic. And in many cases, it's not for the kids to get married, it's for the parents to be happy. Let me put it this way only. They want to be happy that they were able to achieve such a magnificent wedding that they can talk about like Cinderella, inshallah, in the future. And on top of that, we have another problem is the girl also, she grew up watching all these TV shows and all these wedding dresses programs and all the stuff and so on. She can never accept anything less than that. So now they're competing with all these fantasies. They want to build their house, also their castle, to be above the cloud, The guy, he comes and he's counting his dinars and dollars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Most of our younger generation, they're getting married with about 50,000 in average, 50,000 debts in average. Why? Just to cover their expenses that their parents paid for their marriages, let alone the other loans that they get from here and there. So can you imagine yourself getting married, having another mortgage on your back, just to cover up because of to finish because of your marriage? It's very stressful. So when it comes to the concept of marriage, the easier the wedding is, the more the barakah. I had to intervene in a situation when one brother, he came to me begging me to help him. I said, what's going on? His father wants him to delay his wedding or his marriage for next year. I said, but we're ready, alhamdulillah. He's, mashallah, he's finishing, he has his job and he's ready to get married. The only reason is because his father, he says, I don't have the money yet. I said, for what? He says, for the wedding. How much are we talking about here? If you need something, I'll give you, inshallah ta'ala. He goes, $120,000. I said, for what? That's only for the wedding. Because they're going to fly their cousins and second and third, fifth cousins from Pakistan and bring them to the country here and bring all these people, shadi halls that is never heard of before. I said, 120,000, and guess what? That's his share. Forget about the girl's family's share. I said, wallahi, that's unbelievable. To spend close to $250,000 on wedding, and then next day in the morning, you're going to wake up saying, that's it? So what happened with all these $250,000? They're gone with the wind. So I called and I intervened. I said, could you please give him 50% of that pocket change so he can start off, inshallah ta'ala, without student loan. And then, bidnillah, he will continue with his marriage. Finally, after negotiation with the father, he accepted. But he says, we're going to have to wait 6 more months at least. I told the kid, I said, keep quiet. You're good, inshallah ta'ala. 6 months better than 1 year. And having $60,000 in your pocket, be happy and just keep quiet. Khalas. At least it's a compromise. I'm still against it, but it's a compromise. So we have these concepts of weddings that beyond the means of these young men and women who are getting married. Number 5, our social circles. Our social circles, they're one of the main sources of education for us. Whether we like it or not, your kids are learning from their peers more than they learn from you. When was the last time you were sitting with your children on a dinner table and give them not lecture, but manners, akhlaq, exchanging, beautiful talks and words and so on? When was the last time? Except that eat with your right hand. Don't drink with your left hand. Don't talk while you eat. Don't chew too loud. But when was there any kind of communication beyond the instructions like this? Few times. So our kids, they're not learning from the social interaction with parents as much as they would go and learn from their friends. And if you ask your kids and your children, and by the way, I made a survey in a workshop, and I asked these young guys, early freshman college, maybe 1 or 2 years in college, and high schoolers. I said, if you have serious trouble, who would be the first person that you would contact? And I have them write down the answers. The top number one basically, the top person they would communicate with or would talk to would be a friend. The closest friend, number 1, the top person. The second, that's not even a parent. The second person would be some of them they said cousins, some of them they said teachers. And the third, not even parents. Wallah, they came after the third choice. And when I discussed that further, I realized that the reason these kids, they don't really want to communicate with their parents because they believe their parents are always judgmental. And whenever they try to bring this issue up, they get upset. They don't want to hear it. And they just want to finish it instantly, and that's it. So there is no conversation between them. Our kids are learning from their social circles more than we learn from us. So you make sure that you give them the chance. You talk to them. You give them the venue so they can communicate and express themselves to you. This, in my case, my son, my oldest son is 13 years old right now. So I'm officially a father of a teenager. Allah musta'an. But since he was very young, I told him that, and he doesn't like I mentioned this story. Forgive me, my son. When he was still about 10 years old, we were talking about the values of family values and being responsibility of being a father and so on. So he was asking me, I always tell him, if you have any serious question about anything like that, come to me first. Don't go to anybody else. So alhamdulillah, he trusts me. He comes, he asks these questions. So one day he was asking very serious question about marriage and so on. And as I was driving him to the Quran program, when we arrived, but just before he stepped out of the car, he goes, Dad, he says, I think I made a decision. I said, Bismillah. He's 10 years old, 11 years old. I said, what is it? He goes, I want to get married. So I took it seriously, wallahi. I didn't mock him at all. I was holding my laughter, of course. But I told him, you know what? Wallahi, my son, you have my support. Inshallah, you have my support. But finish school first, quickly. And then, inshallah, you go to college, find your job, and I'll help you, inshallah ta'ala. He said, Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum. But the point is, if there is a serious issue, he comes to me first. Because he knows that I'm going to let him talk, let him speak. I won't judge him, and I'm going to try to help him fix the situation. And he's a human being after all. And kid, subhanAllah. You have to understand that. Number 6 and 7, I'll finish that real quick, inshallah ta'ala. Number 6 is venues. Venues to look for prospects. Many parents, they want their girls, specifically for girls, they want their girls to get married in the most traditional format, which means Prince Charm comes on his white horse, tying it upside the house, and knock on the door, he says, I want to marry your daughter. It doesn't happen like this anymore these days. Right, girls? It's very hard. Many parents, they tell their daughters, say, listen, no, I'm not going to accept this guy. He needs to bring his family, he needs to bring his parents, this and that, and so on. Or they say, wait until someone comes and proposes. But the guy is there. Why don't you talk to him? So why don't you talk to him? And the father would say, no, I'm not going to speak to him. Okay, fine. So how can I bring this guy in then? So there's a dilemma. And we put our children in a very awkward situation. They can't do it in the masjid. They can't do it in conferences. They can't do it in a traditional way. And they can't do it even online. And you want them to get married. And on top of that, parents, they don't actively pursue or look for their children. No, they want the other people to come and pursue basically their kids. And in reality, it doesn't happen like this anymore. We have to see some compromise. You need to talk to your kids and see what options do they have in their real life. And the same thing, you as parents, you need to go and introduce options to your children. They might overlook some of these options, but subhanAllah might be the best option for them. The kids inherited this bias against guided marriages. I'm not going to use arranged marriages, which is you have to marry him, otherwise you're not my daughter anymore. No, it's guided marriage. It's basically, why don't you check out this guy? Let's bring the family over and see what he might be the good person for you. I say if someone suggests someone like this to you with the full freedom to say yes or no, don't say no. Give them a chance. Same thing for the guys. Why don't you go and check it out? It might be the best option for you. So the parents might have, again, treasures of experience for you. At the same time, parents, they need to accept the fact that their kids, they're going into completely different society, different culture. You have to seek some compromise on the issue on how to find a prospect for your children. The last point, the issue of readiness, being ready. If I ask these kids right now, the guys in particular, how many of you believe that those who are single? Raise your hands. Can you raise your hands? Those who are single. Okay, mashallah, we have good number over here. Keep him up, don't worry. I'm not going to mark it for you, but just keep him up, yani. Now, how many of you believe they're ready? If you believe you're ready, keep your hands up. How many of you know that their parents believe they're ready? Keep your hands up. So eventually, most of them will prop their hands down because their parents won't think that they're ready for it yet. Said, listen, my son, finish first. Okay, but Dad, I'm already 29 years old. Yeah, but you're still in school. Don't embarrass me. And he's doing PhD degree. So, and that's a real scenario, by the way. That's a real scenario. Someone, he's been prevented from seeking the marriage because he's still in school. I said, your parents don't know, they don't understand that PhD is not that kindergarten type of school, right? We have wrong perceptions about being ready. How do you think you're ready? But the kids, they think they're ready simply because they fall in love. That's it. Because we're in love, everything is going to fall in place, inshallah ta'ala, and we shall live happily ever after. Kids, that's wrong. That's only in movies. And again, wallahi, I don't even know if it happens in movie either. But you need to be realistic about it. For the parent, you need also to push your children to be ready. And one of the biggest mistakes parents are doing, they're pushing the age of maturity for their children further and further. Why? Because we are correlating the age of maturity with finishing school. So as long as you're in school, don't think about finding a part-time job. Don't even try to volunteer. Don't do anything else. Don't distract yourself from school and education and so on. So eventually just school. Okay, but I want car. I'll get you the car. How am I going to fill it gas? I'll pay you. So eventually the kids, they're already actually going to medical school, driving Mercedes or BMWs, even Lexus, mashallah. They're having pocket change more than my salary perhaps even. And then I would just ask the guy, I said, why aren't you married yet? He goes, because my parents, they think I'm not ready yet. And seriously, I said, you're not ready, Masha? You have all of this, you're not ready yet? So we need to figure it out. We need to help our kids and our younger ones to get prepared for marriage. Same thing with the girls. Parents, they keep pushing the girl to finish school first. And unfortunately, they prepare them for the wrong reason. If you ask most girls, why aren't you getting married while you're still in school? It's just because parents, they want me to finish college first. Fine, no problem. But why do they want you to finish college first? That's where we have the problem. What is the number one reason, ladies? The number one reason they want you to finish college first. What would it be for? Don't be shy. No, not independent. Well, semi, but for what? There's another word for it. They use the word just in case. You know what's the meaning of just in case? You guys know what does it mean? What is it? Just in case it didn't work out, alhamdulillah, you have your education to stand on. You know what we gave our girls? We gave them the excuse, the exit door. That's why we have high rate of divorce within the first 2 years of marriage among the youth in America. Very high rate of divorce. You have no idea how many counseling sessions had to do with young guys because of that situation. The girls, the moment she comes into the relationship, things go rough a little bit because they're still getting used to each other. But the moment she sees that, she goes, alhamdulillah, I have my education. Assalamu alaikum. We taught our girls wrong value about their education. I'm not saying that should not be educated. I'm saying go for it, but change your perception of it. Instead of taking this as just in case or a safety net, as they call it also, instead of taking it as a safety net, take this as an opportunity to improve your relationship. You're educated. You can figure things out, right? You're supposed to be educated to work your marriage very well, not to get away from a tough and rough relationship. You are not going to have that Romeo and Juliet marital relationship, not even marital relationship actually. It's a tragedy. So if you're going to base your marriage always on romance, it's not like that all the time. So you're going to have to be ready to face some difficulties in the relationship. Education should qualify you to overcome these difficulties. There are so many things actually in the subject of marriage that needs to be a bridge between the two generations. And I hope, inshallah ta'ala, as the bottom line for this whole issue, that the younger generation, they should understand our parents. They're very protective because they have treasures of experience. You need to talk to them. Talk to your parents and ask them, help me out. How can I go over these issues? What do we do in these cases? And so on. On the other hand, parents, please, 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 get out of your comfort zone when it comes to the subject of marriage. You're going to have to talk to your kids about things you dislike. You're going to have to face challenges you're not happy with. You're just always scared that this is coming. You have to face it. And you have to talk to your kids and have them getting ready for that, inshallah, tabaraka wa ta'ala. Walhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh Yaser Birjas and Dr. Altaf Hussein. One more time for both of them, inshallah. So inshallah, we have a 15-minute break. The next lectures are in this room, Distress, Isolationism, and Spirituality. We have in the Derby room, Ask Me Anything, the American Muslim Youth Panel. And we have the Khutbah Preparatory Workshop in the seminar room. All of those seminars begin at 4 o'clock. Wa jazakumullah khair. Wa assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.